What's up, guys? I'm going to be doing live streams. I'm going to be doing this more often, and I'm going to actually announce it.
Nice. Hey, do you mind if I share this live stream on like my social or anything like that?
Go ahead.
Go for it.
Don't mind? Cool.
Because when you present this argument, man, this is why people have distinct.
Did Bongo the chimp share his banana with another chimp? Is that what you mean by morality? Okay.
I mean, does a snake talk?
Well, I mean, if evolution's true and we all came from a single cell, technically, isn't that pond scum that we come from?
Pond scum is pond scum. A single-celled organism is a single-celled organism.
At the end of the day, the evidence is not. I mean, we might just have to agree to disagree on that, but
yeah, I mean, we're going to. I mean, for one, you give yourself away with the pond scum evolution thing. You are proving to be exactly like Matt Powell.
Well, don't we come from pond scum?
What's up, you heathens and demons, you sinners and saints, you beautiful godless bastards. Welcome back to The Rage. I am the Raging Atheist. Going to be doing a kind of a different little thing today. Going to have a little fun, just me and John, shooting the shit, talking about some Christianity, and a couple other things we're going to start with. Things going on today. I decided, I'm not going to waste days doing a year in review. To me, it was kind of a shitty year for the channel, and I want to take it into this next level, attacking religion and especially Christianity as a whole, staying away from the shit storms that are individuals here on YouTube, while still enjoying some of those shit storms at the same time. And today's going to be a little taste of that, just a little bit of a different kind of talk. We're going to talk about some early Christianity and a little bit of what's going on with Trump as well. We're going to start it with episode 13, though, because this is supposed to be episode 13 of the Apostate Alliance that we were going to try to do again, and it didn't work, and we're going to talk about that. John Peterson is here. What's up, John?
Hey, how's it going? Yep, you're going to have to take that off the screen.
Huh? Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, something about when he's screen sharing, then I can hear my voice coming back at me out of my speaker, and it doesn't happen when it's not on screen.
Yeah, it's just been happening for like a week or so, yeah.
Yeah. If you've been with us recently, you've noticed that, and for some reason, Jeff Spatchcock causes echoes when he comes in. And I forget who said it in chat. They were likening it to a STD and was wondering who Jeff had been streaming with lately and who he caught that from. That
probably P. Mars.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and Tom Rabbit just put another video out about Darth the other day, and part of it was like usually where which I don't know how he gets all these Discord recordings, but Darth was going after somebody like he always does. And P. Mars was in the room. He was like one of the sycophants in the room, washing Darth's balls.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah. As Knock mentioned, we were going to make today was going to be revealing episode number 13 that we kind of skipped over months ago because we had issues with producing it. And then Faye had come up with a solution where she had sent this young gentleman a series of questions, and then he answered the questions and sent them back in an audio format. And I thought that would be a good year-ending thing to do to, show the lost episode 13. And then when Knock went to pull the audio recording up, it was just it wasn't compatible with his editing software, and just trying to play it straight up, it was very, very low. So we're going to have to get a hold of Haas and have him maybe do another recording, or we may try and do like the episode, again as a live episode if we can work that out. It's been a few months. Maybe he's in a place where the internet's better or something now. Who knows?
Maybe the government won't be aware. We'll like schedule it, and then we won't do it for like 3 months. So the government of whatever country he's in won't be aware that we're doing it that day, and they might not interfere.
I mean, I reached out to Faye. Matter of fact, let me check here if I heard back from her yet. I mean, we heard back from her once. I told her, I sent her the link and said, come on if you get a chance. I haven't heard back from her yet. So, so I don't have anything scheduled yet for the new year. I got to work on that this week. There's some people that are on the list that wanted to wait till after the first of the year. So next time we stream, I'll have more news on that. I just wanted to mention a couple things because we haven't really done anything with that for a couple of weeks now. We played that one recorded episode with Cole, former Quaker, but we really didn't have anything to talk about before the show, and I just didn't want to let that go for too much longer because there's some important shit out there that we need to keep people informed of. The one story that I found on Twitter here that I was hoping we were going to talk about today with Faye is that an Egyptian court just acquitted, and this is from December 18th, so it was earlier in the month, but acquitted 3 Muslim men, a father and his 2 sons, after they violated a 70-year-old woman and forced her to walk naked through the street. I guess this actually happened in 2016, but they were acquitted during the court case. All because her son was allegedly in a relationship with a Muslim woman. They spent a total of 2 months in prison. So, they accosted this woman, forced her to walk around naked. That's assault. That's not something you should only go to jail for 2 months. But it seems like, and then the story here, they were released. They were dragged. And it says after violating, dragging, and stripping down a 70-year-old Coptic Christian woman. So I'm not too sure what Coptic Christianity is, but it's just too often in Muslim countries, Muslim men get away with this kind of stuff. And I just don't understand it. I mean, I believe that if that same thing had happened here in the U.S. or in Great Britain, those guys would still be in jail.
Yeah, I mean, we'd hope, and at least now the way our laws are structured now, I think I definitely agree. I think the issue is we definitely see a trend backwards here in the West and even across the face of Western civilization towards extremism of all measures, including religious. It's kind of funny because people like Introverted Smiles. I'm not sure if the audience is too familiar with him. Back in the day, not too long ago, an ex-Muslim that was promoting that, and now he likes to talk a lot of shit about ex-Muslim women and the way they look, and he's pretty detestable. Just put out something like, talking about how people always equate these extremists of Islam with moderates of Islam, and I don't think that we do. And I can't remember. I didn't quite catch the country that you were talking about, John. I don't think it really matters because in what country? Egypt. So I don't think it really matters because I'm sure that in this setting there were plenty of moderates there that didn't speak up against that, right? That allowed it to happen. Maybe they would fear for their own safety, understandably so, but they're not speaking up when it happens. And nobody's saying that there isn't moderates in Islam, but you can't look at any of these countries and say, hey, they're doing it right. At least not any of the major countries that really matter. And like in regards to I just seen something like Saudi Arabia was recently voted as the most progressive Islamic country towards women, and I'm like, by who? Because from what I see, none of them really are, and we shouldn't be afraid to speak out against that. just because some people might point the finger and say Islamophobe. No, we're not talking about all Muslims, but just like we're not talking about all Christians when we're talking about extremism within Christianity. But the problem is, too often these moderates don't stand up against these extremists. And I'm not even saying that they don't have good justifiable reason not to, because they could fear for their own lives. But that's just the fact of the matter. This shit happens, and it's time we spoke out against it and not worry about the retributions of that. I don't care if people are going to point at me and say, you hate this or that. No, I'm going to speak out about injustice. I don't care where it is, and especially if it's due to religion.
Well, and, it's interesting because you mentioned that Saudi Arabia was, by some poll was shown to be the most progressive Muslim country. Well, if you think about that on a curve, like, what is that really saying? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
and you also have to take account Crown Prince Solomon and his propaganda campaign to make Saudi Arabia appear more progressive, while at the same time committing atrocities. What they're doing in Yemen. Yeah, I think he really pushed. I'm not sure if women are allowed to drive in Saudi Arabia now. But he was really pushing for that. But at the same time, pushing also for very fundamentalist things in regards to women. So it's like this really mixed bag with what's going on in Saudi Arabia, and how much of it is true progressivism really taking hold and starting to reform the religion there, and how much of it is this crown prince who is using these classic propaganda techniques to solidify his power.
Yeah, and my thanks to that Infidel Noodle, who will be a future guest in the near future on the Apostate Alliance, Aisha, for that tweet. And the other one I wanted to bring up.
The Lone Wanderer is saying women can drive in Saudi Arabia. So, yeah, and I think that's relatively new as far as I'm remembering. That's something that this crown prince really pushed for once he started to take power. He was also pushing for some very progressive city somewhere or another in Saudi Arabia somewhere, but it was going to be like the shiny beacon of the brand new Islam. I don't think it ever came out of it. Outside of, it pretty much gave him free reign to do whatever the fuck he wanted to in Yemen.
So, yeah, and this other thing I wanted to bring up, and my thanks to Ibrahim S. Amin for this story. And this is a issue that Faye's been involved with since she became an ex-Muslim. But Ibrahim tweets on the 16th of December, "This is why hashtag free from hijab matters. It's not about forcing anyone to remove hijab or niqab. The hijab is the scarf-like thing. Niqab is when they're completely covered and just their eyes are showing. And he's so right about that. It's not about, because if somebody chooses to, though there's arguments that say, well, they can't really choose because they're coerced, but it's not about it's from.
If it's truly their choice, I wouldn't want to take it away from them. It's about whether they were coerced or whether it's like from a sense of shame due to maybe childhood indoctrinations. Like, so I don't know. I think it would be very depending on the individual situations on whether or not I'd be like demanding you take off whatever,
I mean, he goes on to say it's not about forcing anyone to remove hijab or niqab.
Drop my cigarette. Be right back.
But about solidarity for those women who do choose to remove them, and celebrating their courage and defying scumbag fundamentalists who try to bully or threaten them into submission. And that, Knock just alluded to that a moment ago. It's that is what often happens is, they may tell you if asked, much like the first story we're talking about, because they could be fear for their safety and say, oh, well, yes, I choose to do this. But really, they're being coerced, they're being pressured by fundamentalist Muslims for doing that. Yeah. And it says, and then he shared this tweet that this ex-Muslim woman had tweeted out a picture of her in the niqab and free from hijab, free and happy, and then a picture without the niqab on. And then a fundamentalist Muslim responded to her tweet by saying, "The West can't be a safe haven for cowardly ex-Muslims forever." So, yeah, if any of these women that remove the niqab, remove the hijab, or it does not any person that leaves Islam, the fundamentalists are on social media going after them. That was actually a very mild comment compared to a lot of the things that they tweet at these people. And that is one of the worst aspects of fundamentalist Muslims, is that they view women as lesser. They view women as property. They view women as, something that people that have to follow Islam, or there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, and again, it's like, we're not saying that that's all of Islam, not at all. It's probably more dominant in some countries than others, depending on the fundamentalism of the family, of the community, of the individuals. Sometimes you can be very fundamentalist in group settings, and then once you're in the privacy of your home, you're not as fundamentalist at all. So again, we're just talking about these circumstances that happen all the time in these countries, right? And too often, we only worry about what's going on here. We only worry about, they're trying to attack body autonomy here, and that's the way of the fundamentalist evangelicals. And then you'll have the C.J. Coxes of the world saying, well, it's not based on my religion. Bullshit. We know what the game here is. It's a slippery slope. Once you start taking away a few things in the name of religion and you are successful at it, more and more comes. So, you have to acknowledge the atrocities where they occur, and we have to stop being so single-minded and focused on here, and start thinking about those women there, or the gay people there, the trans people there that don't have the luxuries that we have in this country now. And if you're very old in that movement, then it shouldn't be too hard for you to remember when you didn't have those luxuries here. So I think that it's very important for us to acknowledge that, and then be damned with all the hate that's going to come with it, because there is an element that's going to point that finger and scream Islamophobe no matter what. So
Right. I mean, if oftentimes just disagreeing with an Islam viewpoint will get you labeled an Islamophobe by the extremist one.
I have free reign to talk about Christianity, as we will be in this stream today. Should have just as free reign to talk about Islam, just as free.
Yeah. And then so let's see, what's today's the third, first, second, third. So I guess the next Monday is the 4th of January. We may have an episode that day. If not, it would definitely be one the week after, as I reach out to people over the next week. And just real quick before we move on to some topics that Doc has, just want to say hello to everybody. Geo Sam is in the house. He was the first one here, looks like. Critical Cripple, what's up, Dave? Wooly Ignorant is here. Paul Camish, the St. Paul Camish is here. And who else we got? We got the Sassy Heathen Lover. She's here. And Brian Stevens. Who else? Oh, Oz from TARDIS here, the Atheist Roundtable.
Yeah, nice little showing for a Monday afternoon.
And I think Tog is here, this one guy.
Yeah, speaking of Tog, went on his channel this morning. We kind of kissed and made up. I apologized for overreacting, not getting all the information, and I haven't filled John in on that yet, but essentially it's just not worth it. It's not worth it. Tog's not a bad dude. This was just a bad situation. I definitely overreacted. So yeah, we finally made that happen, because last time he was here, you was backstage, John. I had to rush out and I couldn't talk to him.
Was there tongue involved?
No, but it was funny, and we'll kind of get to that. That'll be it kind of reaffirmed why I wanted to talk about some of the things I wanted to talk about today, because I was in that side chat, kind of like prepping for the show, thinking about whether or not I was going to say anything in the side chat, and P. Mars and Veckel, first P. Mars, but then Veckel, just go off on Ronan. You guys probably, Ronan's often in the side chats. Ronan, I can't remember the last name. It be at Ronan. Yeah. And, you know, he has some of these weird Jim Carrey-ish ideas. He's been on the channel once or twice. And, you know, a really laid-back, chill dude, right? And they're just jumping his shit, like the whole room. But especially, like, P. Mars goes on this indignant fucking rant about how, you know, there's no reason to be an atheist. Like, there's no reason logically to be an atheist. All we do is argue against their arguments. And it was just like, dude, you would have swallowed vomit trying to watch that stream. And finally I had to say something. So that's kind of why I wanted to go ahead and start this thing today, and we'll get to it. We're going to get to the Christianity part. So stay tuned for that, because there really is no reason to believe in Christianity. And we're going to start with that argumentation. And it might take all goddamn year, but that's going to be my focus this year.
Well, I mean, and that's why his statement is so ironic, you know. And, you know, speaking of that, so there's, I was on, and also, hey, welcome Brain Bug, and also Yoko Bo. I think that might be
Yokobo. Yeah, so yeah. I can say that easily because I'm a Final Fantasy player. You know, we had Chocobos.
Shriz Zen. That's a new one on me. And Puffalopagus is in the house as well.
What up, Puff?
Maynard saves, smoke weed every day. And so, who's this?
Oh, it's Sydney. Yeah, I never changed the links. And we didn't really know. You know what? It's probably Yep, it's linking in the side chat. You know why? Because I never turn off my.
Yeah. Hey guys, we're not really having people on today, but we'll let Sydney pop in here real quick and say hello.
Yeah. What's up? Let me turn off that timer. That's my fault.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, that was a mistake that the link got posted. We're just going to two of us today, but was there any special reason why you had popped in?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to join in the crusade against Christianity. I want to crush Christianity.
Oh yeah.
I'm standing right behind every word that the raging atheist is coming up with today. So far, so good. I just want to back you up, dude.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
And hey, go back to listening, and you're going to hear a lot more about that. I promise you.
Fair enough.
All right, man. Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you so much, Sydney. And so, there's. We were talking about this on Speed's channel the other day. There's this. I mean, there must be like 25 people in this email chain, and among the Christians that are in it, you know, there's Nephilim Free, John Maddox, Otangelo Grasso. You know, Cy Gart is in it, although he's a Christian that, you know, because of he's a scientist, he full well, you know, accepts evolution and, you know, and is very learned in that field. But okay, so Nephilim Free had put out a email earlier that kind of is like what Knock is saying that P. Mars was saying, is like he emailed that because someone had made the comment that there's no good reason to believe in Christianity. And so he sent an email out quoting that line and then just like a half a page.
P. Mars did?
No. Nephilim Free.
Oh, okay.
And then like a half a page of ha, 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 ha. And then after that, he put an email out saying how there's every reason to believe believe in Christianity. And he said something about, you know, the evolution, how it's 2020. Of course, evolution's not true. Of course, Christianity is true. Darwin rode a horse. Like that was his argument. Darwin
rode a horse. You know, yeah, I convinced me, dog.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so now I can. Oh, and I don't know if you know, but there's 2 empty spots on the screen right now.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I should switch that back over to that. Yeah, all right. Much better. All right, so before we get into Christianity, we're going to get there. I really do want to talk real briefly. We're going to skip that one. I'm going to save that one. Me and John kind of talked about that earlier. I'm going to save that one for a different stream if I decide to stream about that one. But real quickly, I want to talk. Trump signed the stimulus package a day late, and that's the thing that I'm not understanding. So if you were going to let the shit expire, and you were really holding out for $2,000 checks, then why didn't you hold out for $2,000 checks? But he signs it, and it's a day late, and now everything's fucked. Everything's kind of in flux. A lot of those of us that are on unemployment, depending on unemployment right now, really don't know like when we're going to see any money, or if when we first see money, it's going to be enough to pay those bills. We're not going to be able to pay in 3 days. So everything's in flux, and I don't understand. Like this, what I think must have happened was like Republicans called him down at Mar-a-Lago, like, dude, what are you doing? There ain't no way in hell we're giving no $2,000 checks. What are you doing? And he realized if he ever wanted to be reelected again ever, that he was going to have to sign that bill and just kind of eat crow on this one. And I don't get it. Like, if you were going to do that, you should have done that on Saturday, not on Sunday, right? Because on Saturday, everything doesn't go into flux right now, and everything is fucked right now. As of right now, right, everything's fucked. Like, I don't know if I should call the unemployment agency or if I shouldn't call the unemployment agency, because the thing says both. And you don't know, so I'm like asking around, like waiting to see what other people is saying, and nobody's really talking about it because nobody fucking knows anything yet. This is insanity because we have an insane president, and I needed to get that out because fuck, John knows. All we talk about in private now is this bullshit because it's driving me fucking insane.
Yeah, I mean, and as far as the last I saw, okay, so he signed that. According to Mnuchin, the system is in place from last time. They're going to be getting of course, the direct deposit ones will go off first. People will probably start seeing money by the end of the week or the beginning of next week. And so, but right now in Congress, they are doing what is called an amendment. A bill or an amendment to it where they are talking about the $2,000 checks now. The funny thing is if you look at a lot of other westernized countries, and not even necessarily just the westernized countries, but there's like a lot of countries, like I forget what it was, Sassy who's in the live chat. She said Canada was sending out like it was either weekly or monthly checks to everybody, you know.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders wants to do $2,000 monthly checks to everybody until the pandemic's over, which like we actually have that in sight. It's in sight now, right? Like we pretty much know probably midsummer this thing's finally going to be over, but we still got all the way to midsummer. You know?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is too is that you know, it sounds like so much, okay? But when you compare being able to do that during this pandemic to some of the other governmental expenditures like defense and, you know, the money that Congress itself, you know, makes, you know, for their salaries and for the money it costs to run Congress, you know, and some of the other expenditures in the budget, it's really not a lot. There was a YouTuber I just subscribed to. He's called the Blind Billionaire, and not that he's a billionaire, but he aspires to be a billionaire. And he has been covering all this stuff, and he did the math on it. And like the bill was a $900 billion bill, so you might as well say, you know, it's close to $1 trillion. To give everybody the $2,000 check, it was only like another $300 billion. Now, to regular folk like us, that sounds like a lot of money, but when you're talking about a governmental budget, $300 billion isn't really that much. I mean, because like there's countries in the world that we just give that kind of money to.
Oh yeah, and when you say $900 billion bill, it's really like more like a $350 billion bill because the rest of that money was left over from the last one because they didn't spend it, and they were trying to hide it, I do believe. So yeah, I mean, it's just all fucked right now. We might end up doing a stream where we talk about this in depth, maybe even bringing some people on to talk about their individual struggles, because I think it's very important if you are struggling right now that your voice be heard. don't let them delegate you to the shadows, because your voices are what's most important right now. The fact that your children can't eat right now, the fact that you are going to lose your home, or you might already have lost your home. A lot have. So that's something that I will be looking at moving forward, and talking about, and hopefully Joe Biden, and I think it's safe to assume Joe Biden's going to be a lot better when it comes to this than Trump was. So let's get to this bullshit that P. Mars was saying, and that Christians say, that we have no reason to believe the way we think, or to think the way we think as atheists, to question things, to argue against the arguments, John. And I just wanted to point out, and I'm just going to focus really on the early Christian days, the very beginnings of the church, and just some problems that I have, and that I think that Christianity has in general. And I'm going to kind of put it out there, and then me and John will talk about each point, and then we'll move on to the next point. So the first huge problem there is, John, is that there are no historical renderings of Jesus Christ. So literally every single picture every Christian in this country owns is a false idol. I think that's a huge problem for a religion that kind of emphasizes that false idols are bad.
Well, right. I mean, if you look into that region of the world and what people look like from that region of the world, and historically have looked like, this blue-eyed, lily-white depiction of Jesus that's in a lot of the artwork is ridiculous, utterly ridiculous. And yeah, I mean, and you talk about false idols, like we have all that ongoing shiznit between Christians and some Christians and Catholics, and the big thing that some Christians have against Catholics is they believe that Catholics are idolaters because they hold the Virgin Mary on such a high pedestal, and the saints, and things of that nature. And if you read the Bible, people have made the argument, and I think rightly so, that Christian could be construed as polytheism. I mean, it recognizes the existence of other gods in the Old Testament.
Well, yeah, and even some explanations of the Trinity, I think, kind of delves there, and I've seen a couple polytheistic arguments towards that are brilliant. But yeah, I find it a huge issue that so many people are going to base their lives upon the life and teachings of this man, and they don't even know what he looks like. They don't even have an average idea of what he might possibly look like. The Bible's very vague. The Bible doesn't really depict this character. The only reason you have a picture in your mind as you read the four Gospels is because you've seen those pictures since you were a child, and it usually looks like the white Jesus that John was just referring to. But even if an artist had miraculously just nailed it, got everything 100% right, and it's a darker Jesus, it looks more, like they did in the area at the time, and it actually renders itself 100% to what Jesus would have looked like if he really existed. Like, we're not really going there. Even so, that artist had made that up and just got lucky, right? So it's still not like a true depiction of what this God is or looks like. And I think to have any depiction of this God, if it's not a true depiction of the God, according to their own doctrine, is a huge problem for the religion.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't know. Because I don't know what word to use. I'm going to use the word that Christians wouldn't like, but the whole mythology behind Jesus Christ, it really didn't get off the ground until he was supposedly gone. He was supposedly crucified, and then supposedly came back and then ascended to heaven. So maybe you can, on that standpoint, understand why there's maybe no actual artists' renditions of Jesus. But the funny thing is like in the following years following after Jesus supposedly rose to heaven, all like the people that believed in him and got the Christianity religion off the ground. All the Christians apologists nowadays want to give such credence to all of that stuff that happened posthumous to Jesus Christ supposedly being alive. And they want to say, well, this thing here that was written 30 years after the fact is spot on. We have to give it credence. But if there was credence to that, like Josephus and the 500 people that supposedly saw a risen Christ. I mean, I'd like to think that out of 500 people that saw Christ risen, wouldn't there just statistically have to be 1 or 2 artists in that 500 people that would have, done a contemporaneous depiction of it?
And we'll get to Josephus and Tacitus. But I don't think Josephus actually spoke to the 500 witnesses. In fact, I know he didn't, because Josephus was writing in 100 BC or BCE. Pretty much 65 years after Jesus would have died, Josephus was writing. All of those people would have been dead at that point, pretty much without any doubt. I think it was Luke claims to have spoken to the 500 witnesses. But again, we have no accounts of those. All of these are issues, and we're going to get to the Gospels right now, because the Gospels themselves are very problematic for this religion. The 4 Gospels are all very different and often incompatible versions of the life and teachings of Jesus Christ. Now, like, the fundamental problem that I have with the 4 Gospels are they are supposed to be contemporaneous accounts of the life of Jesus by 4 of his apostles, 4 people that knew him personally: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, we're all given this. Like, part of that indoctrination is we literally think the apostles wrote those fucking gospels, right? But on close analysis, this illusion is defeated, because they appear to be written, as John said, several decades after, and by a Christian's own timelines, by the Christian timeline. The publications of the Gospels didn't start until after Nero's persecution in 65. So that's at the very earliest that these Gospels were written. Several decades later, not by the apostles that the names are on the covers, but by anonymous authors. I mean, that's a huge fucking problem for me.
Well, and I forget who it was. It might have been Dr. Josh that was with us in a recent stream, to where there was a discussion during the stream and in the live chat, and I forget whoever it was who presented the proof of it. They linked to something where those names were just affixed to those writings. Like, it was not. It wasn't that they said, were signed by those apostles. They said that it was the words of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. But the reality of it is the people that wrote those are anonymous. Nobody really knows who wrote those.
Yep. And they don't tell you that. They don't tell you that in Sunday school when you're 6 years old and they're saying, that these apostles wrote those gospels. That you don't know that. And unless you get older and start questioning and start investigating, you'll never know that, because they're never going to tell you that. Now it's getting harder for them to hide it, because we have this internet thing to where loud ass atheists like me can put it out there. The biggest problem for me in regards of the Gospels is that the original manuscripts were written in Greek. That's a huge issue for me, because, we pretty much know and can assume safely that Jesus spoke Aramaic. Why? Because he was poor. And in Jerusalem at the time, if he was poor, you most likely spoke Aramaic. That was your common speech that you used every day. We also can safely assume that Jesus spoke and could read Hebrew. No reason to understand or assume that Jesus spoke Greek, and yet the first manuscripts were written in Greek, as I said, after Nero's persecution. So the problem there is that the actual words of Jesus at first publication were translations. That's a huge fucking problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's the other thing, if you really want to go to hell with the joke, is like I've said before. So this is the revelatory, inerrant word of God, an all-powerful being. So regardless of what the original language was that it was written in, I mean, this is why I think I would be a better omnipotent being than the supposed God, because wouldn't you, if you were going to have mankind write this out, wouldn't you have made the Bible such that whoever reads it, it would be in their own language? like I mean, that wouldn't be hard for a God to do. Like, why did it have to be translated at all? And who cares what original language was written in? He's a God. He could have made it so that anybody who opens a Bible would have been able to understand what was in it.
Already the apologists are coming out. No, I'm not sure if Itchik Hunt is a Christian and just apologizing, or if this is what might have heard it, just assuming. Poor, he got given gold at birth. Yeah, I think maybe a little bit. We're talking about shepherds, and I mainly recall like incense and myrrh and shit like that. I'm not sure how much gold he got, but how long do you think that gold lasted? And by the Christian story itself, Jesus was a very poor carpenter, as was his father before him. This is the mythology, the mythos about Jesus that gets relayed down through the ages and makes it into pop culture. If you remember Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, whatever that shit was a long time ago, the Holy Grail was a wooden cup because Jesus was poor, right? Like so whether or not he was poor in reality or not, historians, these are all problems. Now, I'm doing a lot of research right now. These are all problems historians have facing Christianity. These aren't like really my problems, although I'm portraying them as such, and they are very problematic for me. Historians have these issues, and that's one of the issues is Jesus is portrayed as this very poor carpenter, as his father was, and assuming that, given the area of time and what they spoke in that area of time, he most likely spoke Aramaic. And this is something that even Christianity acknowledges, is that Jesus spoke Aramaic. They acknowledge that. That's not something new that I'm saying here, right?
Right. Well, and on that gold thing, I mean, if he was given a little bit of gold, he could have had as much gold as he wanted. Couldn't he have just done the fishes and wine thing and
multiplied? Exactly. You would think, Yeah. Pretty good alchemist, I guess. So yeah, but it's very problematic when you consider that the original manuscript was written in Greek, and it's also problematic because why? Even at that point of time, most of your followers were going to be speaking either Aramaic or Hebrew, right? No, you put it in Greek because pretty much everybody in the Mediterranean was speaking Greek. So you're going to get a much larger readership if you write it in Greek. Marketing. This is very obvious, and it's very problematic for Christianity.
Yeah, and that's why, the thing you brought up earlier about, P-Mars, and I brought up about Nephilim, they project what reason is there? There's no reason to be atheist. Well, guess what? There's no reason to believe this nonsense.
Exactly. I think atheists, we do have a hard time, like when it comes to the concept of quote unquote God, right? Like a lot of us really, if we're going to be honest, like, I don't know if God created everything. I don't know. But what is your definition of God? Because if your definition of God is the Christian God, then I can say without a doubt, I have no issues saying that thing don't exist. That thing's a myth. And then even if a God, quote unquote, a God does exist, right? Like there's some natural mind of the universe. That thing would be so big and beyond us petty fucking human beings that it wouldn't even fit the definition of our human conception of God. So God doesn't exist. And especially I can be 100% certain when I say, yes, you have no reason to believe this stupid bullshit. But I'm going to get it to like, my best point's the last one, John, I think, for this stream. Like, this is just a start. This is just a taste of what next year is going to look like. My daughter's hungry. I'm going to shut off my camera and let you talk for a minute, John.
Yeah. Oz says in the chat, best person ever, ? Apostle Paul, he does that by grace through faith, shaking my head. But yeah, you could have a strong argument for Paul being the best salesperson ever. Although when you think about, the points of it, that, that living for eternity thing, was probably the best sales point of all. It's, what is it now? It's over 2,000 years later, and the myth is still going on. So they really did have a very good marketing scheme. And when you think about, the era that it started in, there wasn't really, much of an infrastructure for marketing, but they still were able to, continue it on. And of course, there was a period of time in there between then and now where, they were actively going around and forcing people into Christianity. They were going around and doing away with people of other faiths, during the Inquisitions and what have you. But the thing is, even though people were forced into it at that point, then from there, it continued on as a tradition thing through families. Maybe your parents were forced into Christianity, but by the time you get a couple generations down the line from there, it's just, part of how you were raised. It was what you were brought up in. And that's what it is for a lot of people even today. Most of the atheists I know talk about how when they were Christian, that was all they knew. Because they were born into a family that believed in Christianity. They were taken to church at a very early age. So why wouldn't you believe it? You as a child, you look at your parents as infallible and you believe everything that they say. So as a young child, if you're taken to church and you're hearing all the stories in church, and not only, you look up to your parents and have a tendency to believe everything they tell you, then they're taking you to this church where this authority figure is getting up and speaking to everybody every week. And it's just natural to go along with it. Most atheists that I know, it wasn't until they got a little older, then they started thinking about it with their own minds. And then that's where they got away from it.
Well, yeah. And I think it's apparent, like there's really no good reason at all outside of the fact that you were born into this to believe this fucking nonsense. Like this dude came back 3 days later and this human being became a god and any of it. It's ridiculous. And I have a really hard time when adults go to that later in life. And I have to assume, I hope that it's mainly, or sad to say mainly, probably just community and pressures and wanting to involve in a subgroup and be part of a community. But then sometimes there probably is really people that start believing this stupid shit when I just can't understand it. But yeah, I'm going to move on to my next one because I think we're getting close to like my final point today. And this is all something that, I've been doing a lot of research, really studying Paul for a long time, and really studying early Christianity, trying to get a fairly accurate look or image in my mind of what early Christians looked like. And a problem that we've often pointed out on this channel, and it drives Christians crazy, and they'll often bring up Josephus and Tacitus and maybe even the letters of Paul in response. I've often heard you bring up this problem quite a bit, John, is that there are no contemporary external evidence for the actual events in Jesus's life. We only have what the Bible says, and that is a huge fucking problem. So I'm going to start with that general concept, and then we'll get into a few key points there and end it with a bang, I hope, because I think my last point is the best point. But because I know that this is something that you like to speak about, John. So go ahead.
Well, yeah, and that is a problem, and that also, I mean, we could recognize the fact that back then, a very small percentage of people were probably had the ability to read and write. But the fact of the matter is that still doesn't mean there wasn't, thousands, if not millions of people around the planet that could read and write. there was artists who maybe if they couldn't read and write, they could have, made paintings.
Yeah, well, and I do
none of
believe, and Dr. Josh could correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody in the chat if you happen to know better, but I do believe, like most Jews, you're trained to at least read and write in Hebrew from a very young age. Most Jews back in those times. Now, there was like a period where I think Christianity really played on illiteracy, but as far as I know, like in ancient Israel, most Jews wrote in Hebrew and understood how to write Hebrew. I could be wrong about that, so if I am, please correct me. But as far as I understand, that's the case of it.
And to me, the strongest point, and we brought it up a little bit ago, is that if there was really 500 people that saw the risen Christ, I just find it so hard to believe that out of 500 people, there wouldn't have been just a few contemporaneous writings, whether it was someone's journal, whether it was like a letter to somebody else. And because there is a lot of contemporaneous writings back from that era, but there isn't any that talk about Jesus Christ as the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ as the man risen from the dead. There's nothing contemporaneous about it. The stories don't come out until people don't write about it until, as Doc said earlier, decades later.
Well, yeah, and I find it really highly suspicious that this supposed rabbi, Jesus Christ would have been a rabbi roaming around Israel, being recognized in towns that he was going to as this roaming rabbi. Word would have spread about him. I find it heavily suspicious that this rabbi wasn't writing, because I think most rabbis back then would have been writing. And for two, that we don't have any of his specific individual writings. To me, that is a non-starter for belief, especially when you're going to base your religion on the writings of Paul, who lived at the exact same time. Paul was born like 7 years after Jesus. And yeah, he lived a lot longer, but he lived at that time, and you base your whole fucking religion on his writings. To me, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem.
Yeah, and then his writings and none from the man that was supposedly the, God risen as a man.
And we do know that a good chunk of Paul's writings were, in fact, fakes. Not all of them. Some of them are authentically written by Paul, but some of them were indeed not written by Paul. So, all right. And the Christians go crazy about that. That's just us being atheists, John. You know that. But John did mention it, and he mentioned Josephus. But I wanted to mention that the closest we come to this, to what we're talking about now, and that the Christians will bring them up, is most especially the Roman scholar Tacitus, who was writing, we know, after Nero's persecution. So after 65, Tacitus was writing, and he was mainly writing about Nero's cruelty towards a sect of doomsayers known as Christianos. And then Josephus would acknowledge that Christians was a sect when he was writing later as well. So we definitely know that Christians was a real thing, but we don't have any external sources for Jesus. And Tacitus himself saw Christians, and most Romans in that time period after Nero would have seen Christians, early Christians, pretty much as the modern day Trumpers of the world. These were a bunch of people going around saying the world was about to end. And that's my final problem, John, is that Paul himself thought that Jesus was coming back in his lifetime. All of these early Christians thought that Jesus was coming back in his lifetime. And that should have been the end of it when he didn't. Right? That should, like 2,000 years later, we should definitely not still be having Christians thinking he's definitely coming back in their lifetimes. This is a non-ending fucking problem until we just fucking end it and just tell them, like sometimes you just have to tell that child, Daddy's not coming home. It's been a couple years. It's a hard thing to have to do, right? You don't want to be that dick, but sometimes you got to be that dick.
Yeah, Christ went out for a pack of smokes and never came back. Yeah, it is a problem, and like I was telling you before we started streaming, I remember my maternal grandfather. He would always bring it up too, like when any kind of doomsday stuff would be in the news, and he told me, he said, "Look," he goes, back when I was a kid in 1920, there was people walking around with signs saying the end is near and, Christ is coming back and all this stuff. And it's, as Knox said, ever since the original claim that Christ will be back in a generation or two, however it was specifically worded, it's been perpetuated since then. Every generation since then that were Christians have claimed he's coming back. Oh, this is when he's coming back. Oh, here's the signs. You look back at televangelism in the last 70 years. I don't think there's ever been a televangelist who hasn't said, oh, the signs are out there now. Christ will be coming back soon. And that's just in our lifetime, just since television's been a big thing in the last 70 years. But it's been going on, as Knox said, for centuries. And when are they going to give up on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost sad at this point. But what's really sad is we're considered the crazy ones. Us. I really like Tog, and it was, Tog kind of started it on his channel. But I sat there and just kind of watched as I was prepping this show as this room full of Christians just jumped on Ronan because, John, Ronan's got some weird shit. Like, even we were like, whoa, man, that's kind of odd. But he's just this chill, like, really, like, I'm going to say, like, dudist vibe, right? Like, if you ever seen, you know what I'm talking about. But, yeah, like Jim Carrey-ish, like, man, I just want to smoke a joint with this guy. I really do. That would be an interesting conversation. And just to see them like attack and just like, oh, that's weird. How can you think that crazy stuff? And to me, I'm just like, sounds a lot more sane than Jesus. Like when is he coming back? Like I really want to know because, like I want to be there to see the human beings fly to space. I want to record it. I want to put it on my YouTube channel. When is this thing going to go down? Because it fucking hasn't happened yet. And it's ridiculous that we're still even fucking talking about it. Like, we live in the modern age. I think, historically speaking, and historians or any Christian, any claim that I've made here in this stream today, please contact me. I'm going to flash it up. I would love to have a conversation about any of the claims that I've made here today, an in-depth conversation, because I'm doing really in-depth research into all of this right now, and I want to learn. I want to learn from you, and maybe you'll learn from me. So please contact me right there, and we'll have that conversation. But if I'm going to see you gang up on this guy and say that his ideas are weird, and then say that atheists have no reason to believe the things that we believe, I just laid out a few of them for you. I have major issues with the 2,000-year-old book you place all of your stock into. Not to mention, I don't think Jesus ever fucking existed. Prove me wrong.
Well, and it's so ironic too that especially like when I brought up that about the email chain, where they're going back and forth about whether DNA is a code and whether evolution's correct and all that stuff, and we're crazy for believing that stuff. And in Matt Powell's movie, he tried to conflate evolution with atheism. The movie was called The Atheist Religion. I don't think they talked about atheism for more than 5 minutes in the whole movie. But yeah, we have all the crazy ideas. It's so much more reasonable to believe that some dude grabbed some dirt and made a man and made the woman out of a rib, and then everybody in humanity came from those two people, that God snapped his fingers and the universe was created 6,000 years ago, mind you, not billions of years ago. Yeah, that all makes so much more sense.
Yeah, I mean, and like they were hung up on Ronan's phrasings. Like you didn't even really get into what the dude believes, but Christians, why? I understand, because it happened to me. You were a child, your parents told you a thing, and you grew up and you started understanding that your parents were humans and they lied just like everybody else, but you never applied that to the God thing. And I get that. I understand that. I understand why you think we don't have reasons not to believe in your zombie god. I get it. I understand it. I really do. To get past all my hyperbole and me talking shit, I used to be there. I understand it. But for you to make any claim that we don't have reason just shows me that you really haven't looked at that book all that well. And I'm only starting at the book. I'm only starting with the Bible. This was just about the Bible. I can talk about the religion and some of the shit the religion has done. And I will. That's why I think it's so much better, John, and we'll start to wrap it up. Instead of doing a year in review, to spend the end of this year and a year looking ahead, you know, what damage could I really do? Because I've wasted so much time arguing with the Smoky Saints, the Matt Powells, the PMARs, the Jills. And I'm not saying I'm not going to do that, because everybody knows I like to argue. But what damage can I really do? Because they're all afraid of me. They've all tried to stop me in one way or the other. Not just Christians. They all try to stop me one way or another. So this year is going to be the year to where I really start doing some fucking damage. And this was just a little taste. Because that's just the Bible, and that's just a few points. Very basic, I think, problems. If you're going to make a fucking statement about how atheists can't, you know, we have no reason to believe the things that we believe, very problems here to start it off with. Go ahead, John.
But yeah, I mean, and, you know, you talk about how, you know, from the moment we're born and we can understand, you know, what's going on around us, our parents in different ways lie to us, you know, and not that it's malicious, but, you know, the whole Santa Claus thing, the Easter Bunny thing. And then you get a little older and you talk to some older kids and you realize that's all bullshit. But for some reason, people don't realize that the God thing is just as much bullshit. Mm-hmm. They hang on to that. And going back to what you said a little bit ago about, you know, like people coming to religion later in life, well, that's because of fear. That's because of fear of mortality. The older you get, the more you start thinking about the end of your life. And some people can't handle that. So they turn to religion looking for an answer.
Yeah, it's so dominant in society now. Like, shit, you watch a movie and it could be some indirect reference to hell, and that could throw you right back there. And like, shit, I am going to be burning.
I mean, there's this old quote from, and I believe it's W.C. Fields, you know, or, you know, some rock on tour from back in that era, was on his deathbed, was ill, not quite, you know, to the point of dying yet. And he had been an unapologetic atheist his whole life. If I'm remembering correctly, that it was W.C. Fields, but it could have been, you know, somebody like Will Rogers or Clarence Clemens, Mark Twain. But somebody came into the room, he was laying in bed because he was ill, and he was looking through a Bible. And they were like, "Why are you reading the Bible?" And he said, "I'm looking for loopholes." You know, so the reason that's funny is, okay, so that's what people do. You know, they get older and they realize my life is coming towards the end. Maybe there is more to this. They can't deal with it in their brain, that they're going to die. And so they go looking for any answer they can. And that's why a lot of people end up turning to religion.
Well, and I think a lot of it too is community. It can be very lonely as an atheist. I mean, I think it really depends on where you live. Like, I think that there's a lot more atheists here in the town I live in. It's just nobody talks about it because, you know, the Trumpism and the Christianity is just, and Michigan's pretty much been taken over by Seventh-day Adventists, although we have a little bit of everything here. Yeah, I think it just really depends, and I think a lot of it is the community. And I you know, one of the things that I was going to talk about, and I'm probably going to say for a different stream, me and you talked about it briefly, John, is there does seem to be an uptick in atheists going pagan and going towards polytheistic beliefs. And I think that's because that's a community that is much more acceptable for atheists. So I think it's very natural that you're going to see atheists that are looking for that community tend to go towards polytheism, especially some of the groups in this community, because they're going to be a lot more accepting than going towards and becoming a Christian again. Although I do see that happen, and I have to ask, you know, I know, like, you know, I'm not going to call out any names, but this one guy switched recently on my Facebook, and it went literally from like 3 days ago, but I mean, when it happened, 3 days before, he had been just trashing Christianity worse than I ever did. And then 3 days later announcing he's a Christian now. He's a Christian again, and this is him now, and accept it. And it's like, no, I don't accept that. Why, motherfucker? Why?
Yeah, so it sounds like fuck the dude's name again? I keep wanting to call him Incel Smiles, but that's not Introverted Smile.
Yeah. Incel Smiles works, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
Trader Smiles. How about
Twitter,
that?
Unapologetic ex-Muslim, and then all of a sudden, like Knox said, like in a 3-day span, I'm a Muslim again, and then he starts trashing all the atheists and ex-Muslims. I mean, he even at one point did a video on his channel about Knox and about how much he liked Knox's approach to atheism, and now he's back to being a Muslim.
Yeah, now I'm probably like,
understand.
I would definitely be an atheist that he would hate, I would think, based upon my approach, when you're exactly right. Like, he loved it back in the day. Did a couple videos on it.
Well, and on that other subject, like, okay, so polytheism, guess what? It still has that word in it, theism. Okay, so if you are, say you were an unapologetic atheist and talking about how crazy monotheistic religions are, Christianity, Islam, whatever, and then all of a sudden you're going to be persuaded that polytheism is correct, which is like, I give polytheism, credit in having more imagination than monotheism, but, there's a reason why the polytheism, the gods of polytheism are made into comic books and movies and graphic novels. And
Shots fired.
yeah. I mean, it's just nuts. I mean, it's even more nutty than believing in one creator God.
Yeah, well, you have different variations there, right? Like I love Marty. Marty's one of my best friends, and she's pagan, and you really is still really hard to like really hammer her down on it. It's very private to her, and it's not something that she just really like. She comes here and she's just Marty, right? So it's not even like a thing. Agnostic Pagan Mom isn't just a supporter in the side chat or a supporter on Patreon. She's on my personal Facebook page. We message each other all the time. And yeah, it's I can see why atheists would be drawn towards that community, but I don't understand belief in any God. As John said, I find it all to be pretty much nonsense. Would much prefer reading about the old gods as opposed to the new one. Yahweh I find to be very boring, and I don't find that to be the case with other gods. I find the history to be fascinating, but actually believing in that, no, to me it's just as John said, it's just as ridiculous as Christianity. Now, is it as harmful? Probably not. No, I don't think so.
Yeah, because it's just not prevalent.
They don't have they don't have any power to be harmful, really.
Right. I mean, if we lived in a country where instead of 70% being Christians, 70% were polytheists, and they would probably be endeavoring to get their religious ideas into the public sphere, into the laws, things like that. But it just
Yeah, I mean, maybe it would be different if they had more power and they were the majority. I think that there's good historical indication that it would be different. But again, these people are all reconstructing these things, and they have the opportunity to reconstruct it in the way that they want it to be, in a way that would fit in the modern world. So I definitely think it has a place. So long as it wasn't based off of those initial models. Like take Norse mythology, for example. Norse mythology, there was a lot of people that weren't raiders or Vikings or in the army, just normal people living their normal lives, being very peaceful. But the Norsemen were a plague upon Europe for a very long time. It just took shit, raided. A lot of people think that all Norsemen were Vikings. That's just not true. Vikings were sea raiders. They had armies. They had raiding parties like everybody else. They were very good at making weapons, and they took advantage of that. And they caused hell. I think you have to look at it as a historical pursuit. Just because they did that back in the day, does that mean you'll do that now? No, it doesn't. You have a chance to reconstruct that in your own image. So, yeah, I think once they got power, we'd see, what would happen. But right now, they don't have power, and they seem to be somewhat aligned politically and socially where we are. And they have a common enemy, as we do. And we've spoken about all this stuff way back in the day. We don't talk about it too much anymore. All of that good stuff.
As I usually do, I'm fascinated by things that go on.
I always chain smoke when I do this, and I shouldn't.
the Maverick and Brian Stevens are going at it, and the Maverick says, "Bring me any secular moral framework. Now make it more effective by applying the belief in God, a concept of divine justice to it." He goes on, since the concept of divine justice gives an additional incentive to be moral and is an additional deterrent against immorality, it makes it more effective. I honestly really want to get you on the channel, the Maverick, because that, those 2-3 sentences was probably the most nonsense I've read in a long time. First of all, the concept of divine justice, please tell me what that is, because when I read the Bible, I don't see a whole lot of divine justice there practiced by Yahweh. Secondly, there are secular moral frameworks. I could explain one to you in a couple of minutes. That's why I want you to come on a channel sometime. That is much better than anything in the Bible.
Well, yeah, I haven't paid too much attention to the side chat. Like always, I'm very focused on conversations when I'm part of them. Yeah, like I find it interesting. Maybe he did earlier, and I just didn't notice it. That none of what I would consider to be very simple historic problems that I pointed out in the stream are coming up. And I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Maverick, I think you've been on the channel before. I'm not sure though. So many people's been on the channel. The name's familiar. I know you've been around forever. So yeah. I find it hilarious. So even talking about on that God perspective, that I as an atheist would have a hard time really saying with certainty that cannot exist. Although I think that Sydney made a very good point that God cannot exist when Sydney was on the channel. And the point involved existence itself. I might end up cutting out some of that because I thought that was a really good point. But like on that universal God, like some kind of discombobulated mind or order to the universe thing that would be way beyond human imaginings, and I just don't even think it's possible on a universal scale, right? How would you ever go about? How would you go about proving that and understanding what that thing would want of you as a human being on earth, worshiping it? Because like when it comes to like individual human gods that we've created here on this planet, I think those are the ones that are fairly easy to defeat, especially Christianity. Christianity is the easy one for me. Just starting with this shit today.
Okay, so. And they're continuing on in the chat. Here's the thing about divine justice. Okay, basically what you're saying, Maverick, is fear of punishment keeps people in line. So that actually is an argument to why secular morality is stronger, because people who don't believe in divine justice and who are moral and good in spite of that, they are doing it for the betterment of their own life and the people that live around them. Okay, so that is much more virtuous than saying I'm going to be a good person, because if I'm not a good person, then some being in the sky is going to punish me at some point. Mm-hmm. That is a horrible reason to be moral and good.
Well, that leads to another problem: divine justice. Like divine justice, what even is that? But this would be a good thing to end on. What kind of divine justice is it that Satan, who was God's like right hand man, number one angel, all that good shit, we all know the story. that Satan would come to the conclusion that God was evil and something that needed to be waged war on. And then Satan was able to convince a third of the heavenly host that he was actually indeed correct, that God is evil and something that needed to be waged war on. That when that insurrection was defeated, this divine justice, what occurred? God cast Satan down onto the earth to run ramshod on his so-called beloved creations and corrupt us with all of this sin so we end up in hellfire. Divine justice is a myth, my dude.
Yeah, it's just part of the whole myth. It's ridiculous. It's not a good reason to be good. It's absolutely crazy.
I mean, divine justice. So, like divine justice, those innocent children that the Israelites murdered with the sword, put to the sword, or the women that became sex slaves. That's divine justice, and that's the betterment of society. All those people that were burned at the stake. That's divine justice, the betterment of society. Take your divine justice elsewhere, bro. Go ahead, John. And then we'll wrap it up. It's time to wrap. Let's finish this thing today.
I believe that it's divine justice if we end right now.
Yeah, I think it's divine justice if we end. So yes, a different kind of stream. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say is because the longer we keep the stream open, the longer that Maverick will have to spew his nonsense in the live chat.
Yeah, I would love you to come on, and you and John can have. I'll just sit back and chill. Y'all can do your thing. We're looking for that. I got it still up in the corner. We're looking for debaters. I want to do a weekly debate, but I got to schedule them. So, gonna really be putting a lot of time towards that. Edited videos will be changing, like response videos. That's just going to be filler content. I'm going to be really focusing on argumentation, things kind of like what I was talking about today, focusing on Christianity as a whole, and not just Christianity, Islam, the rest of the religions as well. I find religion to be fundamentally harmful. I think it leads you down dangerous roads. So yeah, we'll tackle that as we go forward. What up?
Don't be scared of truth, John Peterson. Maverick says, I'm not scared of truth. That's why I'm an atheist.
Don't be scared of the truth.
And divine justice, which divine justice? Which God?
Yeah.
Which God's divine justice?
I like Wonka and Tonka's divine justice best. That's the one that I'm rooting for. Let's get everybody back on the red road. That's what I'm rooting for. But all right, so that's it for the day. Gonna wrap it up. Any final words, John, on the problematic history of early Christianity? And we're just like literally, I've got 6 pages of notes just on very early Christianity that I'm really going to be focusing on, edited video wise.
Well,
go ahead, John.
And I hope we get to it soon because I definitely want to have that discussion about why are atheists drawn to polytheism? It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, I want to see where that goes because it's being talked about right now. Some atheists are for it, some atheists are against it. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a room about that. We'll bring in people and they could just talk about what they think. I think that would be a good topic for a conversation.
Yeah, maybe we can do that Wednesday night.
Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure if we're going to have one this Wednesday night, though, John.
Why is that?
Because of the StreamYard issues we'll talk about it off air. So, with that being said, I am going to get out of here. Thank you guys for being here. Just something a bit different today, but not going to be different going into the future. Not saying that I'm not going to be focused on some individuals. Y'all know what I do, and I like to argue. But really going to be trying to change what I do here. And if you're going to hate me for being the raging atheist up till now, my goal is to make that worse for you. So thank you, patrons. Y'all have a good day. All right. Patron screen is running, John.
Perfect.